Welcome to another episode of Game Changers for Government Contractors. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that is designed to help you scale your business. There are really four key areas in any business that can help you scale and deliver faster for your customers. And if you don't have these four areas optimized, or you're not looking at these areas, your business is just going to run slow. There's going to be a lot of bottlenecks, and it's going to be hard to scale your business. So let me just open up with saying what the four are, and then we will dive into each one of them. The number one area is people and education. Number two is delivery of your products or services. Number three is testing and measuring. And number four is systems and technology. So these are fairly simple things in the business. However, they tend to get overlooked. And so when you first start running your business, let's take a look at people in education first. You typically are trying to hire to put a butt in a seat. Like, I need a warm body that can show up and do the work. And when you're approaching your business from that perspective, those people aren't always A players. They're often B or C players at best. Sometimes they're less than that. It just really depends. Or they're a good friend of yours, or a cousin's recommendation, or something along those lines. And what you really need to be doing over time is looking at how you ramp up your people to where you have more A and B players on your team than anything else. And so getting better people is always a big deal, but looking at the people who have potential and getting them the right education is also key. So you can turn a C player into a B player, maybe even an A player, if you're really focused on educating and training them. Because some C players are C players simply because they don't have the skills or the knowledge to be an A player. They have the gumption, they have the work ethic, but at the end of the day, they don't have the knowledge, and you've got to pour that knowledge into them in order to get them into the B or C or B or A role that you need to get them into. So on the first side of this, it's really about recruiting. So you need a system for how you recruit. You need to build a pipeline for recruiting people. So most people think in business, you just need a sales pipeline. I think you actually need a recruiting pipeline, and your recruiting pipeline should be something that you're always putting people into. You're always collecting resumes. You're always looking for people, because you never know when you're going to find that diamond out there who's unhappy with their current job. They are downsized for some crazy reason. I mean, I've seen A players get downsized because a whole division gets shut down, and they get offered an opportunity to move to another division, but they say, nah, you know what? I'm going to take a step back and see what I really want to do, and, really calculate my next steps. So there's a lot of reasons why A players might be on the market. And if you're consistently collecting resumes, you will find those. And when you find one of those where you're like, oh my gosh, I just got to have this person, then you have to find a way to bring them on board, even if it's not in the budget. You've got to figure that out some way, shape, or form. So always recruiting to find the right people, using not only behavioral assessments, because I really feel like anybody can fake a behavioral assessment, but getting better at your actual interview process. I did a podcast just a few months ago on recruiting, so go back and take a look at that one. It's basically for like salespeople, so that you don't spot, or you can spot the fakes, because there's a lot of fakes out there who can interview really well, but then when they get in the role, they don't do so well. So that's one of those areas where you're recruiting, your actual interview process, and then your onboarding process is really good. I've seen a lot of A players turn into B or C players because the onboarding process is not very good. I've talked about this before, where I've started a new job and it takes 2-3 weeks before you have your laptop and all your login credentials. And basically you waste 2 or 3 weeks just sitting in HR presentations and just kind of hanging out with the team and not really doing the job. And that's demoralizing to an A player. And then when you start doing the job, there's too much micromanagement. There's so many ways to ruin a good player. And it often happens in the first 90 days of how you onboard an A player. So your onboarding process has to be very clear about how you bring them into the company, how you start on the right foot day one, and then over that first 90 days, how you train and educate them on the company way and those types of things. And then it gets into the education side after that, where there's opportunities after they get through that 90 days to continually educate themselves, whether it's monthly lunch and learns, whether it's hiring a coach for your team that can work and coach and mentor them, whether that is, buying books and doing book studies or things like that, book club, whatever it may be. There's workshops, there's conferences, there's all kinds of ways to educate your people. If you're not consistently educating them, they will stay at the level they are. You can't expect people to just go out and do that stuff on their own. A player should, but if you are getting their appetite wet for education, then they will do it on their own. But you've got to get their appetite going for the education. So that's why I recommend get the right people on the bus, start educating them, and then continue to have a method that you use or a system to continue that education, not just a once a year thing, but something on a monthly basis, something bigger on a quarterly basis, and something bigger on an annual basis. And those are good ways to educate folks. The next area we talk about is delivery. So how are you delivering your products and services to your customers? And I don't just mean like shipping, like putting things in a box and delivering. I don't just mean that. How do you actually execute your services? How are they receiving it? One of the things people don't understand when you start a business, whether you're product or service based, you're in the customer service business. That's the biggest thing. You are trying to deliver a service, deliver a product at a high level. And if you don't do that, nothing else matters. So if you say your products are going to be there on Friday and they don't get there till next Tuesday or Wednesday, you fail. If you say they're going to be there Friday and they get there Monday, you failed. If you say they're going to be there Friday and they get there Friday late in the day, you've sort of failed. Like, you want to try to get early. So if you say your products are going to be there on Friday, you want to try to get them there Thursday or Friday first thing in the morning. The same thing with your services. If you say your delivery date is this Friday for a service, maybe it's a PM thing or a report you're delivering. You don't want to deliver on Friday. You want to deliver on Thursday or Tuesday or Monday. Get some time in there so people are like, they said this and they did that. So that they under promised and over delivered. We don't want promised and delivered or over promise, under deliver. We don't want that. We want promise and over deliver. That's the way we want. And you can't under promise in this business because that doesn't help. So whatever your promise is, we want to try to beat that mark all the time. And we want to do it with excellence. So we don't send a report to a client that doesn't have headings and footers, that has grammatical mistakes, that doesn't have graphics in it, that hasn't been proofread by the team, that when you send it to them, other people on your team haven't read it yet, things like that. So you want to deliver very high quality, not just on time. And that's where a lot of people, in my opinion, miss the mark. They say they're going to under promise and over deliver, but they under promise and then even under deliver on the under promise. So examine your business and look at how you're actually delivering your promises to your customers, and look at the systems you use for that, the tracking you use for that, how you can adjust your proposals to under promise and over deliver without actually telling them you're under promising, by setting a very logical delivery date and then beating it. And you may need to get into the systems and technology side of the business for that, to figure out how you can do that. We'll talk about systems and technology last, but you need to come up with a great way to deliver your products and services to your customer so that they are wowed by what you do, and consistently wowed, not just wowed on the initial delivery or on the initial month or two of services and then you wane over time. They need to be wowed forever about how you deliver your products and services. Let's next talk about testing and measuring. So testing and measuring is really about the data. The data is what should run your business. When I take a look at a business, I'm always asking for data, not just like budgets and balance sheets and things like that. There's marketing info and things, but there's delivery data. There's data on all areas of your business. There's some sort of data points that can tell a story at the end of the day of how well you're doing. A really simple one is if you look at your proposal area. Let's talk about that for a minute. When you're looking at the proposal area, there's a certain amount of proposals you're going to review. There's a certain amount you're actually going to respond to. And then there's a certain amount that you're actually going to win. Initially, we want to increase the close rate on the ones you're responding to and winning. So let's say you're responding to 10 and you're only winning one, that's 10% close rate. We want to get that to 20%, to 30%. And so we look at what we're reviewing and decide on better metrics, bid, no bid process to make sure that what you're reviewing is more attuned to your business model so that you are only responding to things that you can win. And that should increase your close rate. Then we start looking at the actual proposal and saying, okay, based on what we have here, let's modify our corporate overview. Let's modify our executive summary. Let's modify our pricing template. Let's modify our resume templates. Let's modify the language we use. And there's all kind of tools and technology out there for that, whether you're using AI or not. There's lots of ways to modify those things. But it gets into looking at specific areas and starting to make little tweaks to what you have, not redoing the entire thing. So we're not going to redo the entire proposal. For the next proposal, we're going to, number one, make sure that it's something that is winnable. It's something we should be bidding on. And we've got a really tight bid, no bid process. That's one. And then we're going to focus on our executive summary. That's the first thing we're going to focus on. And then on the next proposal, we're going to tweak another area of the proposal and then another area of the proposal and so on. And so we're testing and measuring little pieces at a time to make little improvements, not just change the whole thing. Because if you change your entire proposal on the next round, you don't know what made the change. But if you tweak your executive summary and make it better, and it's the rest of the proposal is very similar, and all of a sudden you win, you're like, oh, the executive summary is finally in tune. If you don't see a change, okay, let's go ahead and tweak the executive summary a little bit more, and then let's look for one other area, and then just keep doing that. One area of improvement each round to make sure you're getting better. And then you're just measuring that. So how many proposals did we do under this new criteria, and how many did we win? Did we go from 10% to 15%? Okay, that's a win. Let's keep ratcheting it up. Let's keep testing things and measuring to see where we are. Now you do a couple more rounds and you're like, oh, now we're at 20%. Or, hey, we went from 15 to 12%. What did we change that we need to change back? And so testing and measuring is a way of making sure you are doing new things that give you an opportunity to excel in an area, but also measuring it to make sure if you go down or up, you know where and when to make the tweaks to those instead of going months and months and months without knowing how that's changed. So you don't just test things, we measure the results, and we do that in every area of the business. The last point I want to talk about is systems and technology. One of the things that I've seen a lot with all of the AI releases and things that are coming out now is people are letting technology drive their processes. And it should be the other way around. They're saying, oh, we've got to be using ChatGPT. We got to be using Claude. We have to be using fill in the blank technology because it's the latest, greatest, hottest, whatever. We've got to be using it. And when you are forcing yourself to use technology without processes in place, a lot of times you're going to get pushback from the team. They're not going to use it. You're going to waste money, and it's just not going to work for the team. But when you sit down and you map out what your process is and where you could be using technology, you give the technology a better chance to succeed in the team. But more importantly, you give your processes a chance to succeed. You should be using systems for everything. Even if it's a very simple process, it's like we open this Google Doc, we update it, we email it off. It's a couple step process, but it's very, very simple. But you should have a process for how you do things so that if you need to replace an employee, if someone's out sick, whatever it may be, someone can jump in and do the job. You know, God forbid something happens and you lose an employee for whatever reason, somebody can jump in and do the job because it's all documented. You have systems and you know how to log in and what tools do what. And that's where you need to be. Let the systems drive the technology choices, not the technology drive just purchasing technology. I've got a friend of mine that every time I tell him about a tool I'm using, he will literally stop mid conversation, go online and buy it. And I'm like, dude, you don't even know if you need this in your, how it sounded cool. Okay, well, you're going to sit, and then I'll talk with him. I'm like, hey, did you ever use that? No, it's been almost a year and I still haven't touched it. Great. So you have a subscription to this thing and you haven't even touched it. We don't want to do that. We want to look at our business and say, where are some pain points where I'm spending too much time, where things can be automated, where we're not delivering the same every time. And now we need to create systems that make the delivery smoother. We need to create systems that make our recruiting smoother, systems that make our proposal process smoother. Now that we have the systems, what technology do we layer in for the people in education, the delivery, the testing and measuring? What technology do we layer in? So you probably are understanding why I left systems and technology till last, because once you have all the processes and systems in place for those other three areas, now we can bring the systems and technology in and make those tweaks and automate things to make them smoother. So just to recap real quick, there are 4 key areas or levers that can make your business run better and eventually without you. It's people in education, delivery of your products and services, testing and measuring, and systems and technology. If you have problems actually working in these 4 areas, that's something that we are masters at. We can come in and help you do a deep dive. We can, pull back the curtain, lift up the hood, whatever you want to call it, and look into your business and say, okay, here's what you should fix first and what you should fix next. Let's start outlining how we're going to do that and make those changes so that you can get some more freedom in your business. Because as you grow, once you have a handful of people in the business, you as the CEO, leader, executive, you are now the biggest bottleneck in the business. And you now have to be looking at ways you can leverage your team better. And it comes by pulling these 4 levers, pulling them consistently, and now being a master of that in your business. So we can help you with that. If you have questions, there is a link in the description for this podcast where you can go and click on my calendar, book a time, and we can talk about this stuff and just kind of see what we could help you do. If you have any questions, as always, you know how to reach me. Love that you listen to the podcast. If you would do me a favor, please go on in Apple Podcast and rate this podcast. It's really, really difficult to get those ratings out there. We'd love to get that. And I really appreciate it. That's really the only thing I'm ever going to ask for you out of the podcast. So thank you. Share it with a friend if you think it would be good for them. And we'll see you next episode.